Imagine yourself here. If you walk into a church in Europe today, Germany, Spain, France, you may find something stunning. Ancient stone, stained glass, silence, magnificent buildings, centuries of history, but precious few people. We call this a secularized society. Now, cross the Atlantic. In the United States, religion feels visible, public, and present. On a dollar bill, it says, "In God we trust." This is not decoration, it is identity. So, the easy conclusion seems, Europe is secular and America is religious, right? But reality is rarely that simple. When we call a society religious, what are we measuring? Church attendance, public symbols, political speeches. Then turn to the person next to you. In one sentence, what is the strongest sign that a society is religious? Hold that idea. If faith becomes private, does it disappear, or does it change form? The early pilgrims in America sought more than a fresh start. Many of them came to escape religious intolerance. They believed they were building a new world with moral purpose. So, religion in America was always public. It shaped identity, it shaped politics, and it shaped nation building. Quick question for you. Do you agree that letting religion guide politics leads society to a moral direction? Thumbs up if yes, down if no. I see some hesitation, and I see some deep thought. It's hard to give a simple yes or no, right? For those of you who hesitated, is it because you're thinking about the risk involved? We'll circle back. Europe followed a different path. After centuries of religious wars and state churches, faith moved inward. Institutions weakened, meaning became private. Perhaps the contrast is not belief versus disbelief. Perhaps it is institutional versus individual. Let that distinction sink in. Does visible faith equal deeper spirituality, or can spirituality exist without institutions? Following this, write one sentence. Can spirituality survive without institutions? Once again, can spirituality survive without institutions? Let that sit. Two different answers to the same human question. How do we live with meaning in a modern world? In Europe, the institutions remained, but the spirit moved out. In America, the spirit created its own institutions. And that question will guide everything that follows. Let's move on to Chapter 2. The American Savior Identity. We just saw how settlers sought a sanctuary for their beliefs. In this chapter, we'll see how America tried to create a sanctuary for democracy across the Atlantic. After World War II, Europe was devastated. Cities destroyed, economies collapsed, millions were hungry. Then came the Marshall Plan. The United States sent food, money, and materials to rebuild Europe. To many Americans, this felt like a moral duty, almost like a Christian act of charity, helping neighbors in need. However, imagine two scenes happening at the same time. On one side, a hungry family in post-war Germany receives food and medicine. To them, America looks like salvation. On the other side, an American policymaker fears the spread of communism. He wants stable allies, open markets, strategic influence. It seems aid doesn't just help. Finish my sentence. Great. Someone's already got the key phrase. Let me go over that again. Aid becomes generosity. Aid becomes strategy. Aid becomes power. From the receiving end, this looked like salvation. But history thickens when we examine motive. Because generosity and strategy are not mutually exclusive. The Marshall Plan strengthened Western Europe economically. It also secured political alignment. It stabilized markets and contained Soviet influence. Now, please write down the sentence you see on the slide. Do compassion and calculation always have to coexist? By calculation, I mean a form of strategic self-interest. When we look at history, are these two forces always bound together? Keep that sentence. And the next time, we'll look at the cost of this coexistence and the crisis it eventually creates. Take out the sentence you wrote in the previous lesson. Do compassion and calculation always have to coexist? In other words, can an action be both genuine compassion and strategic self-interest at the same time? It can. Not hero, not villain. something more complex, which leads to a deeper psychological structure. When someone saves you, are you empowered or slightly indebted? To put it simply, when someone helps you, how do you feel? Turn to the person beside you. In one sentence, does help create power? Once again, does help create power? It's a heavy question, isn't it? Because in the grand theater of history, help is rarely just a gift. The Marshall Plan did more than rebuild cities. It exported a vision: democracy, capitalism, individualism. The American way of life was presented not as one option, but as the answer. Why? Here's something interesting. When we help, are we only restoring, or are we also reshaping? We can say that American aid transformed into power because it redefined the world it was rebuilding. Hence, helping became guiding, guiding became correcting, correcting became reshaping, and reshaping became controlling. Good intentions do not erase power. However, when power goes unquestioned, history begins to crack. And that crack, when help becomes control, the mission changes. And that is exactly where the story of Vietnam begins. Take a look at the word on the slide. Savior. After World War II, this word felt good. It felt right. The Marshall Plan wasn't just about money. It was about saving. Saving Europe from hunger. Saving it from communism. Saving it with the right values. America believed it was doing good. And in many ways it was. But embedded in that goodness was a dangerous assumption. If we are the savior, we must also know what is best. Does that logic sound familiar? It didn't stop at food. It didn't stop at money. However, it moved into politics, into culture, and eventually into war. Vietnam was not a mistake of the savior complex. It was its extreme expression. The structure was the same. We are good. They are vulnerable. We must intervene. Only this time, the intervention wasn't aid, it was violence. Now, close your eyes for a second. Imagine the same hand that gave bread in Berlin, now holding a rifle in a village in Vietnam. What changed? The hand or the mission? This is where everything unraveled. Because Vietnam forced us to confront a terrifying possibility. What if our desire to save is also our capacity to destroy? For the first time, the Savior looked into the mirror and saw blood on its hands. Power always travels with help. In Europe, that power arrived quietly, through money and markets. In Vietnam, it arrived loudly, through bombs and grief. And suddenly, the question was no longer abstract. It was personal. Young Americans weren't just watching suffering, they were causing it. The mission was no longer overseas, it was inside the American conscience. If you can believe you are saving the world while burning a village, then moral certainty itself becomes suspicious. Now turn to your neighbor. In 5 words or less, can you do harm while trying to do good? This wasn't just cynicism. It was an awakening. We began to realize that good intentions do not absolve responsibility. Believing you are on the right side of history does not protect you from doing harm. The Savior complex collapsed under its own weight, and in its place a painful question emerged. If we believe we are saving the world, how do we know we are not harming it? Think about that. Maybe being moral means resisting the role of savior altogether. It's the shift from the good American to the truthful human. Vietnam didn't kill belief, it killed unquestioned belief. And once that happens, nothing can go back. A savior who can no longer trust his own righteousness must either double down on power or learn humility. That choice between saving and listening, between domination and humility, that is the unfinished question we are still living with today.